Hi, in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create an animation similar to this. Notice the rectangle on the bottom right-hand side. It's animating up and down to show the viewer that there's more text after they click on the mouse button. And it's something similar to what you would see in a role-playing game. So how do we actually create an animation similar to this? So I'll show you how to do this. The first thing that we need is a triangle image. So this is essentially a PNG image. And this is the visual novel that we'll be working with. So I'm going to play it now to show you what it's going to look like. So I'm going to play the current scene. It says, "Hi there, this tutorial is fun." And when I click, it goes over and shows more text. But we saw in the previous dialogue section that it wasn't showing an arrow to show the viewer that there's more text. Let me play it again so you can see. So if I play that scene again, there's no arrow currently showing. So we want to change that. We want to have it show an arrow to show the viewer that they can click to see more dialogue text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the dialogue rectangle tab here. Then I'm going to click on Add Image. And here I have a PNG file for that triangle. I'm just going to open it. So it got added to my project. So that's the PNG image that I'm going to work with. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Reusables. Reusables are essentially scripts that you can run over and over again, regardless of the scene that it's in. So they're like shared scripts in a way. So I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call it Arrow Animation. And inside that, I'm going to add a script. So I'm going to highlight it and click on Add Script. And I'm going to name the script Move Arrow Down. And if I click on it, it expands and there's a new script I have called Move Arrow Down. So this script will be responsible for moving the arrow downwards. And we're going to have another script to move it back up again. And that's how we can create our moving arrow animation. Before we put anything inside the Move Arrow Down script, we need to load that PNG file. So the one that we added, more text arrow, we need to actually load this so that it's available in our story, in our visual novel. So I'm going to click on Chapters and Scenes, and I'm going to expand my chapter. So I only have one scene so far, but I want this to apply to all the scenes in this chapter. So under the, I'm going to select the chapter name. So this is the chapter and this is the scene. And I can tell that by looking up here. It says the first day, which is the name I gave it. And then here it says chapter. And if I select the introduction, which is the scene, it tells me that it's a scene. So that's how we can quickly tell. So I'm going to click on the chapter because I want this to apply regardless of how many scenes I have in this chapter. And I need to load that arrow image so that it's available in my visual novel, because currently it's not available for use. It's been added in the list, but I'm still not using it in the visual novel. So to do that, I'm going to click on the wizard, and then under dialogue, I'm going to choose Load Dialogue Sprite. And the one I want to use is this one, More Arrow Text. And here we can give it an alias. So a name that's easier for us to reference in our script as we write our visual novel so that we don't have to always use this name. So I'm going to give it an alias of Text Arrow. So from now on, it's going to be known as Text Arrow in my visual novel in a lot of spots. So I'm going to click on OK. And it generated this script here for me. So I'm going to click on Save. So now this means that it's going to be available in my visual novel. Like that down arrow is going to be available in my visual novel with the name Text Arrow. So that's the alias that it's going to use in my visual novel. So I'm going to go back into Reusables. I'm going to click on Move Arrow Down. And here I need to show that down arrow image. So I'm going to click on the wizard. Then I'm going to go to the dialogue section. From here, I'm going to choose Dialogue Sprite Show. which is this one here. And here it's asking me which sprite I want to show. So it's not asking for an alias here, it's the actual name. So I want to use this one. I want to show this on the screen. So now that we've told it that we want to show that image, we can set the horizontal position of that down arrow image. So to do that, well, first of all, let me just save it and run it. I'll need to, I can't actually run a reusable script. That's why it gave me that message. It says reusable scripts cannot be played directly. They need to be called from main scripts. So I need to go back to my scene, and from here I can play the scene. So you'll notice that when I move my mouse pointer, the X and the Y change. So when I go down, the Y increases, and when I go from left to right, the X increases. So that means I need to position the down arrow somewhere here. So I'm going to move my mouse to the position I want. So I want it to start somewhere here. So let's say 690 by 420. So I'm just going to write that down. Yeah, so 690 for the X and 420 for the Y. Okay, so I'm going to close this visual novel here, and I'm going to go back to the reusable section. And I'm going to click on the wizard, dialog. So I'm looking for dialog sprite, and I'm looking for set position. There it is. So dialog sprite set position X. So the alias of that is text arrow, and I want the location to be set to 690. Okay, so similarly, I want to do the same thing for the Y. So I can go back into here, set position Y, and also for text arrow, because that's the alias that I gave it. And the coordinates for the Y will be 420. Let's just save that. Okay, so nothing will happen just yet. So we've created this reusable script, but we're not calling it from anywhere. So if I go back to my scene and then call it, it's as if we made no changes at all. And it's because we created a reusable script, but we're not actually calling it or using it anywhere. Okay, so the next thing that we should do is we should actually start using it so we can get a better idea as to what this script is doing. So I'm going to go into chapters and scenes. And what I'm looking for is the section where I defined the dialogue. So this is it here. This is what I used to define the text dialog, this rectangular area. So 700, for example, is the width, 140 is the height, and so forth. And then there's all these different options. So we need to actually create a new one. So I'm going to click on wizard. I'm going to go to dialog, text dialog define. I still have the old one here, but I'm going to comment it out, or I might delete it later. So I want the dialog rectangle area to still be the same size. We'll do 700 by 140. And it's going to appear mid-bottom. Yeah, that's a good location. Then animation I'm not too concerned about right now. Colors, opacity. Yeah, 180 opacity is fine. And then the main thing I was going to show you, actually we can add some padding here. X padding 10 and Y padding 10. So the main thing I was going to show you is halt. So here we can tell it to run a reusable script whenever halt or unhalt is used in the visual novel. Whenever the text stops and when we're waiting for the viewer to click to proceed to the next dialogue text, we can tell it to run a reusable script, which is exactly what we want to do here. We're using halt to stop the text or to pause it to give the viewer a chance to read what's on the screen. And when that happens, we want it to run that arrow animation. So let's make it run this. And we'll have to come back to this later on. So move arrow down. So I'm just going to click on OK. And we can see it generated a new line. So I'm just going to put a number sign here so it doesn't run the old line. So now it's only going to run this new line because it doesn't have a number sign in front of it. And this is the reusable script that is running when it reaches halt, move arrow down, which is the name of our reusable script that we're working on. Okay, so now technically it should actually run something. So let's run the current scene and see if it works. Oh, the animation is very slow. I'll have to speed this up. So for the animation, I'm going to set it to a speed of 70, similar to the one above it. And let's just see if this is any faster. It is. We are getting somewhere. So first of all, the rectangle's opacity is almost opaque. Like it's hard to see through. So in a case like this, I want to make it more transparent. And one of these values is used for the opacity. So I can see that the old line had 130 and this new one has 180. So I'm going to set it to 130. Yeah, so that's the opacity. So it's that looks a little better. And then we can see that the arrow is showing up at the right spot. So this is where the animation will start eventually. And you'll notice that it only shows up once the text finishes, once it reaches halt. So here it's going to say, hi there, this tutorial is fun. And then it's going to reach halt. When it reaches halt, that's when it runs that text animation. So let's just see that again. And you notice that it showed up after. I'll play it one more time. And it showed up later after the text finished showing. So it's good so far. We just needed to move down. So we got it to show up. And if I click, you'll notice that it's still stuck there. So we also need it to hide as well, because currently it's just always showing. So the next thing I need to do is I need to figure out where I want the arrow to stop. So I want the arrow to stop when it reaches here. So somewhere here. And the Y for this is 445. So I want it to stop at 445. So I'm going to go back into my reusable script here. And I'm going to click on Wizard, Dialog. And I need to add a movement condition or stop movement condition. So I go here and it says Dialog Sprite Stop Movement Condition. So it wants the alias of the sprite. So I'm going to put here more text, or text arrow actually is what I named it. And we want it to stop when the top reaches 445. So I'm just going to put that in there. Okay, so we're telling it to stop when it reaches 445, but we haven't actually told it to start moving yet. So here we can tell it to start moving. So I'm going to click on Wizard again under Dialog. I'm going to choose Dialog Sprite Move, so this one here. And we want it to not move horizontally, but we're going to move it vertically. And we're going to move down. And we can move it down by, let's say, 3 pixels. And it wants the alias here again, so I'm just going to put in text arrow. I'm going to click on OK. It generated the script here for us. And now we need to tell it to actually start the movement animation. So I'm going to click on Wizard again, Dialog. And Dialog Sprite Start Moving. And we'll give it the alias here again, text arrow. Okay, so technically, this should actually move down by 3 pixels. And then it should stop when it reaches the Y position of 445. Let's just save it. We'll play our scene and let's just see if it works. It does, but one thing I noticed is that it was too fast. Like I'm going to just play it again. That was pretty fast. So I'm going to go back to my reusable script and I'm going to change this to 2 pixels. And that should affect the speed. So that was a little bit slower, but we'll have to actually start the full animation to get a better feel. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to tell it to run a different animation when it reaches the bottom. So when it reaches the bottom, we want to move it back up. And then when it's back up, we need it to move down again. So in a loop. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my reusable script here. And before we start moving it, I'm going to use this command. So I'm going to click on Wizard again and go to Dialog. And I'm looking for Dialog Sprite after movement. There it is here. So after movement stop. So here it says run a reusable script after a specific dialog sprite stops moving. So when it stops moving, we want it to run a different script. So the sprite that we're concerned about is text arrow, and we need it to run a different script. So we don't actually have the other script yet. So here I'm going to eventually call it move arrow up. So I'm just going to type that in here, move arrow up, but obviously it doesn't exist yet, but that's okay. And now is a good time to actually create it. So I'm going to click on add script, and I'll call it move arrow up. And now we have another script here. So the starting position again for the arrow was at 420, a Y of 420. So I'm going to click on move arrow up. And what I need to do is I need it to stop the animation here when it reaches 420. So I'm going to find dialog sprite, stop movement, and condition. And from here, I'm going to put in the alias text arrow. So when the top reaches 420, we need it to stop the movement animation. And we're telling it to stop when it reaches 420 because that's actually where it starts. Okay, and now we need to move the sprite upwards. So I'm going to click on wizard and then dialog here again. I'm going to find dialog sprite move, and we're going to move it vertically. We're going to move it up by 2 pixels. Oh, forgot the alias. It's going to be text arrow. So now we're telling it to move by 2 pixels up. And we can tell it to run a specific reusable script again when it stops moving, because we need it to run the downwards script, like move arrow down when it reaches the top. So I'm going to choose dialog here again. Then I'm going to find dialog sprite after movement stop, run a reusable script after a specific dialog sprite stops moving. And we know it's going to stop moving when it reaches 420. So we're going to put in text arrow, and we want it to run move arrow down. So when it finishes the upwards reusable script animation, we need it to run the downwards animation. And that's what we're telling it to do here. Okay. And then we have to start the animation as well. So we're going to find start moving. And here I'm going to put in text arrow like that. Let's just run this to see what we get. Yeah, so we can see that the animation is working. I'll just run this by you here again. So we have 2 scripts, move arrow down, and we're telling it when the movement stops, run move arrow up. And when we're running move arrow up, when it stops, we're telling it to run move arrow down. So right now the animation is still a little bit too quick for me. I want to slow this down a bit. So how I can do that is I can add a delay. So under dialog sprite move, I can add dialog sprite move delay. And this basically delays it by X number of frames. So I'm going to put in the alias here again. Yeah, so for the vertical movement, it's going to skip however many frames that you specify here. So the higher you go, the slower the animation will be. I'm going to set it to maybe 2. Then I'm going to click OK. Oh, for the horizontal, I have to specify 0 because I'm not going to change anything there. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to copy this, and I want to have that same thing under move arrow up. So here, I'm going to paste that. We're going to have the same delay. So I'm going to save it and run that scene and see what we get. Yeah, so it's definitely slower. You can speed it up more if you wanted to. You can experiment with that to see which speed works well for you. Another thing that we can do is, like, when I click on it, you'll notice that the animation won't disappear. I'm going to click on it now. But I want it to disappear when it's showing the gradual text animation. So we need to tell it to stop animating whenever text is being displayed. So to do that, I'm going to create a new reusable script, still under arrow animation. I'm going to name it move arrow stop. And in here, I'm going to stop moving the sprite. So under dialog, there's a command specifically for that. So dialog sprite, stop moving. Yeah, this one here. And I'm going to put in text arrow. So here we're telling it to stop moving. And there's another one to actually hide it. So dialog sprite hide. And I'm going to put in the name of the alias. Click OK, so it generates the command. And I'm going to save the project. So we need to actually run move arrow stop because it won't run automatically. I'll show you what I mean. Like if I run this now, it won't make any difference. And if I click, it still won't disappear because we're not calling it. So we have to go back into text dialog define. And if you remember, I'm going to click on wizard again and go to dialog, text dialog define. Remember this tab where we told it to run a specific script whenever the halt command is used? Well, here we need to run the stop animation script whenever the unhalt command is used, or essentially whenever the story is resumed. So I already have a text dialog here defined. So if you're creating one from the beginning, you just choose move arrow stop, and from here you select move arrow down. But because I already have one defined here, I can just change it. So here it's move arrow down. The next one that says none, I'm going to change it to move arrow stop. Okay, so I'm going to click on save. I'm going to run my scene now. So now it's showing it just like before, but when I click, I expect this to hide, and then I expect it to show again whenever it finishes showing the next text animation. Let's try it out on a count of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so that worked. So it definitely caused this to hide. I'm going to play it for you here again so you can see it. So it's showing. When I click, it hides it, and then it shows it again after this finishes showing. So it's working the way that we expect. And that's basically how you create a moving animation, especially specifically in a spot where there's more text to read for the viewer. This type of animation comes in handy. So it works by using text dialog define to tell it to run a reusable script. And here we can create our reusable scripts to do what we need for this type of animation. I hope you found this useful, and until the next tutorial, have a nice day.